when you till, what you kill is all the life in soil. So instead, you gotta stack your bed with piles and piles of stuff. Every time you use a shovel, you cause trouble for untold millions. Every time you use that rake, my cellular stands get braked. Don't even get me started talking about tractors. Don't even get me started on tractors. If there's something more destructive than a cow, it would have to be the mold bar to plow. If you turn the soil with a fork, you're committing genocide. Genocide in your soil. Oh yeah, yeah. Woo-hoo. That was a little song for the no-tillers, the people that oppose the bacterial killers and the fungal destroyers. Oh, the mold board employers, yeah. Okay, so, good evening, everybody. It's nice to see you all. Freaking Dave Hartman says, negative 10 degrees Fahrenheit here this morning. Oh my goodness, you're in the mountains of madness. Yeah, Lucifer double digs. It's funny. So, hey, Alan and Brian and who else we got here? Evan, dime a dozen. Marker 113. Hello. Freaking Dave Hartman. Drew. Tina. Man Guy Dude. Foo Bear. Elizabeth Parker. Hugh. Heather. Carolyn. Florida Bear 911. Dan, Permaculture Food Forest. Nice to see you. And Nancy, Mad Jeeper, New Hampshire, nice to see you back. And Diana, Gordon, I say well, hello. Hey Mark, nice to see you. And I was just watching Jeb Gardner for a little while. Jeb Gardner is hilarious. He's very funny. Right now, he just like filmed himself playing classic World of Warcraft. I think that's going to be as big a hit on his gardening channel probably as my recipe videos are hits on mine. Every time I do like Eddie Vedder sings a gardening song, you know, I get like 300 views and that's it, which for me is not great. So anyhow, it's fun to occasionally go and try to catch somebody else's stream and see what they're up to. So, I had a really good post that I put up this morning, and I'm telling you this because it's a really good post. Okay, so there is a link. There should be a link. I think there's a link below this video in the description. I'm going to drop it in the chat too. Alan, who is here this evening, asked if I would figure out what it cost to put together a dose of Steve's micronutrient fertilizer mix because it's a long, complicated list of stuff. So what does it actually cost? So what I did is I actually calculated it out for a 25 square foot bed. So a 5 foot by 5 foot bed, like the experiment beds that we're doing right now. I'm going to drop this here. And that link that I just dropped is going to my website, which I post on every weekday, and that gives an overview on what these things actually cost. But not only I was going to do it eventually after Alan mentioned it, but it took me a couple of weeks because it was really kind of a pain to calculate all the bits and pieces, because some of these things I bought in big bulk bags, and some of them I bought in smaller bags, and some of them they're really minute amounts. Like to calculate how much I paid for the sodium molybdate, or how much I paid for 1 pint of cottonseed meal, that kind of thing. It's really itty bitty. So it's very it's really it was a lot of going over the receipts and the prices, and I went back and okay, what did I spend at Tractor Supply for this or whatever. But instead of just doing the Steve's Mix thing, I calculated it for all the beds. So if you guys saw my recent video, you saw the trial beds that I laid out. This is the no good rotten soil fixin' experiment here, and this is the overview of what the beds actually look like. And let me see if I can make this so it all fits, and hopefully you guys have good enough resolution to see this. The rye and peas cover crop, the urine, the Dynagrow, the alfalfa, the 10-10-10, the biochar with Dynagrow, the lasagna garden, the control, the worm castings, the Dave's fetid swamp water, DFSW, Steve Solomon's mix, and the Neptune's harvest, seaweed, and fish. So that is the overview of the 12 beds that we did. But what we're talking about this evening is how this actually works. Which ones of these are what you might call extractive farming? And by extractive farming, I mean like, okay, what are they doing to the soil? Are we building the soil or not? I've watched a lot of, well, I've actually done more reading on it than watched, but I've watched a few videos that people have recommended to me, restorative agriculture, restoration agriculture, that kind of thing. But I've read books on how the soils used to be, out Midwest, topsoil, rich topsoil underneath the prairie. That's 16 feet of beautiful soil. And after being tilled and farmed with corn, later maybe corn and soybeans and things like that, they've gotten it down to maybe a few inches of topsoil, or the topsoil is basically gone, and they're still farming it. And the way they're farming it is by spraying chemicals on it to keep everything alive. You give it this certain amount of fertilizer, you spray this Roundup to get rid of all your weeds in between, or to kill the crop down for harvest. And you maybe do a crop. You do your crop in between of a legume, and you till that under at the end, and then you add more nitrogen for whatever extra you need after that. So you add a little bit back, and then you take it out again. And what's happening is long-term established, deep, beautiful topsoil is getting destroyed. So what people do is they look at this, and they look at some of the things that are being done to fix it, like people like Gabe Brown. All right, Buck Nasty, you are banned. So when you look at what they're doing, you say, okay, some of these guys, what they're doing is they're planting awesome cover crop systems. They are building soil back up again. They're doing things like mob grazing cows and goats running chickens like Joel Salatin. You know, they're building the soil back up, building an ecosystem back up, and recreating what used to be there. Some people are reforesting, creating these beautiful forest systems that that make the soil life come back over time, that build humus again, where the leaf fall is coming and all these things are going. Now this is great. This is cool stuff. And then you look at it and you try to apply it in some place like where I live. Now, I was talking to a friend of mine here, and he said, you know, we would take these, that area back there, see that area back there, back behind my mom's place, we would put in a deer food plot every year. We would plant all the cover crops. We'd fertilize it, and we'd put in a bunch of cover crops. And we would till that under, and it would grow, and we'd grow again, and we'd till it under, and we'd grow it again, and till it under, and we'd grow it again. And then he says, you know, that soil got real nice. He said, but you know, you go back there now, look at that grass. They had nothing. You can't tell we did anything back there. So why is that? You're fighting geology. You're fighting geology. That's the problem. It's not every soil that can just become 16 feet of beautiful topsoil, unless perhaps you were to manage it constantly, or bring in tons of material from elsewhere. You know, where I grew up, the native soil, South Florida, is sugar sand. That's what we call it, sugar sand. And it is a coarse grit that leaves a little bit of gray dust on you when you plant it. I used to mow the neighbor's yard, and the neighbors didn't do anything to their yard, and it did not look like a prairie. They just let the grass grow, and it was all full of stickers and weeds and stuff. And I would mow my neighbor's yard when I was a kid, and I got $20 to mow the yard, which was big money for me, and it was awesome. And the dirt, when I would run that mower through there, the sand and dust would just kick up, and I would go home and blow my nose, and it was like black, gross, like you get all this grit in your nose and stuff, and your teeth would get full of grit because it just would cough it out. So I realized, you know, not to mow it if I could help it when it was really dry out, because it would just throw all this dust up. You couldn't keep great anything there. You know, when we would go to the park, sometimes we go into an area that had trees, and there was areas and they have a little bit of kind of a darker soil underneath the trees with some leaf matter and that kind of thing. But if the tree gets cut down, that disappears really quickly. It's not long-term improved. The most of the fertility in that area was simply in the trees themselves. And that's like they would bind up and hold on to organic matter, but boy, you could not build long-term soil. I dumped in, you know, peat moss. I've told you guys, compost and peat moss and all kinds of stuff over the years. I bought bagged soil, and we would just end up with sand dunes again. You know, sand dunes, terrible. And you couldn't really build it long term. You didn't want to. You could make it beautiful for a period of time by dumping stuff on top of it, but it won't stay that way. Like as soon as you stop the application of deep mulch, the humus starts rotting away. So in some situations, the soil responds really well to being built up, to being, you know, turning into amazing, awesome pasture lands again, to being a repository, to having very high exchange, you know, rate in the soil, where you know, when something just, like my old property down on the island, that soil was fantastic. The locals would just leave it alone for a few years sometimes, and then just clear an area that had completely become rainforest again, and underneath it was super rich, and they could grow on it without any fertilizer whatsoever. There was a lot of micronutrients in the soil. The biology starts to come back on the land. They could just let the trees grow for a period of time, and then they would hack it all down and burn it, and then plant on top of it, and it was great. But if you look at my backyard, which gets mowed every once in a while, it is just gray, dusty grit with grass on top of it. A friend told me, she's like, this is just what we call just kind of the stuff that holds the earth together. It's not really soil. It's just kind of that stuff that holds the earth together. I'm like, I like that. Just that stuff that holds the dirt, the earth together. So, looking at it, like, I could cover crop it and do it and turn it all under. And it's going to grow for a season, but eventually it'll probably start to revert with most treatments. However, let's take a look at this list that I have here. And you can see which ones would be extractive, just basically using the soil to hold the roots, and which ones would actually be soil builders. And some of these soil builders are going to last longer in certain soils. Christian says, I'm interested in your old Florida food forest. Have you been to visit it? Yeah, I went to it last spring. Not this previous spring, but the spring of last year, and I've seen some pictures, and it's still a very functional system with a lot of food in it, and I need to go down there and do a tour before too long, because I'm friends with the owner, so I will get back there. So, the rye and peas cover crop. Now, that is going to build soil. If we chop that stuff down and till it under, even if you use a tiller, if you till under a cover crop, you're both getting the roots underneath rotting down, and you are getting you can actually till under the top of it, and more of the nitrogen will be trapped by the soil than if you simply just chopped it and let it lay on the surface, because as it bakes and dries out on the surface, it'll off-gas quite a bit of the nitrogen, whereas if it's underneath the ground, the soil life will hold it in there better. That's a way to build soil, plus the peas are actually going to add more nitrogen to the soil, plus you're going to get more carbon in the soil, which is good for your next crop, and that's going to, that is a soil building practice. Now the next one, tilling under alfalfa, or turning alfalfa into the soil, yes, that builds the soil. These are short-term things though. The next one, lasagna gardening. Now, lasagna gardening is a fantastic way to build up an area of soil, whether you have sand or clay. I really like it as a soil builder, and I often do it with perennial beds. I like to lasagna garden or deep mulch. It really works quite well, and what you get out of it after a year, like it just ends up with this beautiful layer of compost, like this big, and the soil underneath blackens up and you get more earthworms. Really, it's very nice. Now the next one, Neptune's Harvest Seaweed and Fish. No, what it is it's just basically feeding the plants. We may end up with a little bit of extra minerals in the soil afterwards, but it's mostly just the roots are held by the sand. The sand is not turned into amazing soil by this. This is a foliar feed. There's going to be some residual minerals left over because the ground's going to get drenched, but this is not really doing much. This is not adding any humus to the soil, putting in more carbon in the soil or anything like that. The next one, urine, that's a foliar feed. That's not going to do anything to build the soil up. 10-10-10 definitely does not build the soil up, and it'll actually it can increase the decomposition of organic matter in the soil. So your organic matter may actually go lower after using chemical fertilizers. The control bed is doing nothing. We will add some life to the soil by growing crops on top of it. Just having roots in the soil is good for it. Having bare ground that just sits there and bakes is the worst. Having the little bit of plant life in it for the period of time it's growing will help some, but eventually it's just going to disappear. So we're not really doing much there. Steve's mix is going to add some humus to the soil because the cottonseed meal has humus in it. The kelp meal will help create humus. And it also is going to make some longer term changes because of the extra calcium and gypsum and some of these things that are going in, but some of them also they're not going to stick around, like the salts. Your magnesium sulfate or boron will stick around for a while. It's hard to get these kind of things to bond and stick in sand because we get a lot of rain and it leaches out and it disappears over time. So Steve's mix is going to have to be a repeated application. So this is buying in and putting it in. In theory, the vegetables that are coming out of it, though, because they're going to have a high level of micronutrients in them, should be more flavorful and more healthy for me than the vegetables that I say grow in 10-10-10, or even the vegetables that I grow in alfalfa, which is just not going to have the wide, excellent range of nutrition. So using Steve Solomon's mix is for our own personal health, and another side benefit of it is that everything we compost that grows out of that bed, like say, even if we grew a batch of rye in there and then we composted it all and threw that in the compost pile, that rye will have much more nutrition in it, many more micronutrients in it than rye that we would grow, with 10-10-10 bed. So you're going to actually add to your compost more micronutrients. Dynagrow is a weird one because that is a foliar feed and it's often used by hydroponics gardeners, often used with like marijuana growing and that kind of thing. But Steve told me, he says, the marijuana growers are actually on the cutting edge of a lot of the research with plant nutrients and stuff, which is hilarious to me. Dude, like, your molybdenum is just unbelievable, man. I mean, it just marijuana scientist just cracks me up. But anyhow, that has soluble calcium and it has, which is not common. It also has 16 different plant nutrients in it. So it is a very mineral-rich solution, but it's not something that's going to really stick around. But it will fertilize the plants. The plants will have more minerals in them. It does not add any humus whatsoever. It's just a liquid, a liquid solution. So this is going to go when whatever I compost from that bed should have more mineral nutrition in it than, again, like a 10-10-10. Or if I just grow in the native soil, which is very, very poor, whatever compost is made from that poor soil is going to be significantly lacking in micronutrients. But if it's been grown with Dynagrow, which is just pure elemental forms of its elements and compounds, it's not, it doesn't have like the GMOs and the weird stuff in it, or the pesticide residues or herbicide residues that may be in cottonseed meal or in purchased manure or purchased compost. So it's just kind of the pure forms of the various elements that plants need. So in theory, everything that's grown in there should have much higher mineral contents, especially in those micronutrients that the soil is mixing. So when we cycle this back through the compost pile, whatever scrap we get out of there, I mean, it might even make sense just to simply grow a bunch of biomass, like grow something like Sudan grass and grow it with Steve's mix or Dynagrow, just to get a huge amount of minerals into it and then compost that into the system. The next one, biochar with Dynagrow. Now, the potential on biochar is very interesting because this could possibly be a soil amendment that is near permanent. Stephen Edholm, who is Skill Cult on YouTube, is a big fan of biochar. Steve Solomon is a fan of biochar, and they are for, it's almost like adding long-term humus to the soil, and having all that extra carbon there, having basically a nutrient sink is really nice. That, of course, it has to be soaked with something, so I soaked it with Dynagrow. So I would put all the minerals into it, and I'm hoping what happens is the biochar becomes a repository that holds those minerals for a long time. The worm castings there, this is one that's really, worm castings are really good. And I am going to be setting up a worm bed before too long. But the worm castings in this soil, I think, will do well for a season. But this is, again, not a long-term thing. This is a buying it in and dumping it into this bed and hoping for the best. But it's going to burn out. The geology is against it. There are not worms moving into this bed. I have not seen any worms digging out there whatsoever. Just digging up the ground, 0 worms. That is sad. But I'll tell you something. Across the street from me, they grazed cows for years and years, and and the soil looks better. The grass looks better. The cows have brought the soil back to life, and there are things growing over there that look really good. And then there's this big patch where they dumped a whole bunch of old cow manure, and there's grass and weeds growing all over it. And that's where I got some of the cow manure that I added to the lasagna garden. There's a cow manure mine over there, and the neighbor said I could help myself, but I could get wheelbarrow after wheelbarrow after wheelbarrow. And in there, I dug up that area, and I found worms in that cow manure. And some of those worms have ended up in the lasagna garden, which means the lasagna garden, in my gardens, is now a worm bunker. They may breed and live in there. They've got all that organic matter to eat. And then over time they may spread to the rest of the garden, which would be really, really cool. But the worm castings were by far the most expensive amendment. Let me run down my amendments here. I did the cost calculator. And we'll start with the fetid swamp water, DFSW. And that one I threw in a quart of kelp meal, and I'm going to add a couple of cups of Epsom salts. So the total cost for a 55-gallon drum of Dave's fetid swamp water was $2.18. And I'm going to apply 2 gallons every 2 weeks for 12 weeks is going to cost me 54 cents. This is a great way to feed a large area. If you have not read my book, Compost Everything, I talk all about Dave's fetid swamp water in there. It's amazing. You can use all kinds of different materials to make the batch, and then you just feed your garden with it. Now, bed number 2, that's the worm castings. The total price to amend the bed was $30 for a 5 foot by 5 foot. That's brutal. The biochar bed cost me nothing for the biochar. We had a lot of limbs and stuff after Hurricane Sally. I just made biochar out of them. And out of limbs that I found in the woods. And then I made a really heavy duty soak of Dynagrow, and that was 75 cents worth of Dynagrow. So the bed number 4 that is just using Dynagrow is 57 bucks a gallon, but it's super concentrated. So it's a teaspoon per gallon of water that you use. So it's really highly concentrated. So for 12 weeks of application, which is 6 doses, $4.50 for that bed. The urine bed is obviously free. 10-10-10, $8.99 for a 40-pound bag of 10-10-10. I used a quarter pound to feed a 5 foot by 5 foot bed, which is 6 cents. If I have to do a side dressing later of the same amount, it'll cost me 12 cents. I understand why people do this, man. Ugh. The control bed, nothing. Of course, Steve Solomon's mix, which you can see the links to all my numbers on the website and more notes. The cottonseed meal, garden lime, pelletized gypsum, bone meal, potassium sulfate, borax, manganese sulfate, zinc sulfate, copper sulfate, kelp meal, sodium molybdate, The total price to feed that 5 foot by 5 foot bed was $3.43. So for that's the highly mineralized bed with extra compost in it. So yes, the amendments themselves were expensive, but I bought them in large quantities. Because if you buy a small bag of kelp meal, you might spend 17 bucks for it, but if you buy 50 pounds and you have it shipped to you, you spend something like 80 bucks, and that's enough to do a huge area with micronutrients. So yeah, it is expensive, but as you spread it out, I've got enough stuff to use for season after season. I just went ahead and bought, yeah, you know what, I'll get 20 pounds of potassium sulfate, you know, that kind of thing. So, you know, it's not that bad when it's spread out over the beds. Bed number 9 was the Neptune's Harvest Seaweed and Fish. This stuff is $35.99 per gallon on Amazon. And I have links to all this stuff too on my website. Some of it are Amazon associate links, and some of them are just links for informational links. It costs 24 cents per application because it's 1 ounce of the fish and seaweed fertilizer per gallon of water. So that comes out to 12 weeks of application, 6 doses. $1.44. The Lasagna Garden cost me $1 because I put about $1 worth of alfalfa in it for nitrogen, alfalfa hay. And I paid $19.99 a bale for the alfalfa. So in bed number 11, which is just alfalfa, $2 worth of alfalfa I used in that bed. The Ryan Peas cover crop in bed number 12, 75 cents worth of seeds. So really almost nothing. So Matt Jeeper in New Hampshire says, David, what do you inoculate your biochar with? I simply used Dynagrow because it has all the micronutrients and stuff in it. So I am sorry, Sheffy, it blocked you there. I saw you just posted your email. I just let it through for you. So Anthony says, just got me a fresh batch of swamp water going. Yeah, that is a fantastic amendment. Mark Pablo says, will dynamic accumulators like the Dythonia Diversifolia eventually suck out all nutrition of the soil if chopping and using it for compost? That's a very good question. That is a very good question. Yeah, you know, it may, over time. I do know that, like say, if you grow the same crop in the same area, things become deficient. So if you were to grow corn for a period of time, or you grow pecans for a period of time, and you harvest the pecans out of there, yes, indeed, you will lose some minerals. People often treat their pecans with zinc sulfate, and that extra zinc is being taken away when you harvest the nuts, and you've taken away some of what they what that plant has made. So every time you take a harvest, you're extracting something from the land. Ideally, I suppose you would eat the pecans, you would compost your own manure, and you would return that to the pecan trees, and they would be happy, and you would have a complete nutrient loop. But that's a little difficult for most people. So, thank you very much for this super chat. Brenton sends a super chat and says, I'm sad you couldn't take your coffee plants back with you. I have 4, and I know how long it takes to get fruit from them. Yeah, I appreciate it. I always wanted to have a coffee plantation, and then, oh well, things happen. There's a lot of things I wish I could have brought back with me. But you know what I brought back with me? I brought back with me a ton of knowledge. And I brought all my children back with me. And I brought 2 new children back with me that I didn't have when I moved. My wife came back with me. My kids came back with me. We're all healthy. So I do miss the coffee plants. I would love to get some Coffea liberica coffee plants again. If anybody has a source for Coffea liberica seeds, man, I would love to grow those things. Very cool. So hey, Alejandro, welcome back. Nice to see you. I don't care if you're late. I was late too. So, the extractive versus, using the soil versus building the soil. If you are simply okay, let's say you blast an area with Roundup. This is really common. You blast an area with Roundup. You got a patch of grass and weeds or whatever. I'm gonna spray it with Roundup. Spray that stuff with Roundup. It dies. Then you get your tiller, or you go rent a tiller. You till it all under. Till all that dead stuff underneath. You know, that way those weeds ain't coming back. You've just tilled them under. And then you throw down, you know, triple 13, triple 10, triple 8, whatever. Triple 6 if you're even more evil. And you know, you follow the application rate, you throw that stuff down, and you plant your garden. You may have built the soil a little bit because of those weeds you tilled under, but overall you're extracting, and you're just using the soil as something to hold those plants in. And it's not building the soil long term. Your next garden, that soil is going to be depleted. You're going to have to do the same sort of thing again. You know, you're constantly throwing chemicals into it. And one of the reasons I really love the food forest systems and the perennial systems is to see how the soil life changes over time, how the ground grows over time is astounding. The chopping and dropping, you know, the allowing the humus to build up, to even just throwing chunks of logs on the ground and letting them rot down, watching different mushrooms come up, it is so cool to build soil. I love building soil. I enjoy seeing what it looks like. And I'm going to show you guys a pair of pictures here because I am calling out my friend Elizabeth. I'm going to show you something here. This is cool. I have to save this thing from my website and show it to you. Those of you who do not visit thesurvivalgardener.com. You know, I'm a writer first, right? Like YouTube is my second thing that I started doing after writing. I mean, other than being a bossa nova singer. I'm a bossa nova singer who became a writer. I became a YouTuber. All right, let me show you this. This is cool. But if you're not visiting thesurvivalgardener.com, I post there every weekday. I have a new post, and I'm always posting super inspirational stuff. Pictures of, you know, like cats. You can make it. No, not really. I am posting regularly, though, but it's gardening stuff. Okay, so this here, this is the original soil, if you can even call it that, at my friend Elizabeth's place. That's really bad. Don't you wish that you never saw such a horrible sight, such a horrible sight? But there's hope, folks. Let me show you this. Let me zoom down to the second half of this. Look at this. You can rejoice. It's so beautiful. Think of how those plants will grow in this humus-rich soil. Okay, it's beautiful, isn't it? I mean, look at that. Son of a gun. This is just outside of her garden area. This is what I dug up from underneath the mulch in her garden area. What she did was she deep mulched, and she planted lots of cover crops in it. And I'm going over to her house, and I am going to film this because this is what deep mulching does. This turns this nasty grit into this. And if you dig down far enough, you'll find this stuff again. But she says over the last year, the layers are getting deeper and deeper in her garden. It's getting better and better. And that's exciting. Now, if you wanted to have that kind of effect continuously, I was talking with Stephen Edholm, Skill Cult on YouTube. I was talking with him some years ago. We've been talking for a long time. His brain and my brain work very similarly, except, you know, he's more handsome than I am, so what are you going to do? I'm a better singer. But I was talking with him, and he was saying, you know, how could you build soil long term? You know, the chop and drop thing, that's really cool. You know, the chop and drop thing is really cool. You're growing plants in place, chopping them up and throwing them in the ground, building these soil layers. Like, it's fast forwarding what happens in a forest. Forest is always dropping a bunch of stuff. I'm going to see, it looks like this is running a little slow for me. I'm going to see if I can change the output on this stream. I'm going to drop the quality a little bit. I hope it's not too much for you guys. See if I can get this thing going green again. You're building the soil. You know, the forest is always putting new roots in the ground. The plants are mining nutrients. The fungi are pulling nutrients out of the soil. The leaves drop, the limbs drop, the soil builds, the soil builds, the soil builds, and you get into the forest, and it's this rich, humusy layer. But you cut the forest down, or you burn the forest, and after a few years, that stuff all goes away. You know, in the food forest system, I love it because you can perpetually just leave the forest to take care of itself after a while. But the chopping and dropping is one of my favorite things to do. I love dropping material on the ground, chop, drop, chop, drop, chop, drop, turning stuff into soil, turning sand into soil. It's fun. But it doesn't necessarily last long term. It'll last as long as that forest is there, probably, because the forest starts to self-perpetuate. But if somebody cut down the forest later, you know, that soil is not going to remain fertile. But the strange thing about that terra preta soil of the Amazon is the surrounding soil is horrible, but this soil just is perpetually good. Even if they slash and burn over the top of it and let it bake, that ground is still fertile. Like they're loading trucks up with this soil and selling it to gardeners elsewhere. You know? That's cool. And that seems to be linked to the biochar thing. So when I was talking with Steven, he was saying, wouldn't it be interesting to plant fast-growing, like chop and drop type trees, maybe mulberries and poplars or aspens, or you know, you even have your oaks regrowing and you know whatever. Put Dythonia, Diversifolia. Put tall grasses mixed in, and you take this material and you dig a trench, and then alongside the trench you plant all this chop and drop stuff, and a few times a year, you know, you could just chop this stuff down and throw it in the trench, and then biochar it, extinguish the fire, and cover it over. And then when it grows back again, you chop it and drop it, and you turn it to biochar, and you cover it over. And you keep making trenches and planting more and more biomass-producing stuff, and carbonize all that soil, which would last for a really long time. But I was thinking additionally, after some of what I was reading and some of my experiments with adding clay to compost, you get a really sticky, stronger compost when there's some clay in it. It really holds together. The humus lasts long term. What if you were doing this trenching and burning and covering and trenching and burning and covering, and you were just, if you had sandy soil, just scatter some clay in every time? Maybe if you have clay soil, you'll throw in gypsum, put in some azomite, you know, put in some long-term stuff that will soak into that biochar. I don't know. It seems like there's got to be some cool ways to just build soil that's going to be lasting 100 years after you're gone, even if somebody mismanages it. I like that idea, and I think there's a key there possibly with biochar, which I find very interesting. I have been neglecting the chat here. Let me go here. What's so special about the Liberica? TJ Thoreau asks. The Liberica is a lowland coffee. It's much more vigorous. It has larger beans. It grows in a wider range than the Coffea Arabica or even the Coffea Robusta. Liberica is a lowland coffee, so I think for South Florida, I would love to plant it in South Florida because I think it would thrive, and it makes pretty good coffee. People don't realize how good that coffee is off it. It's often just used for rootstock. I think it's a great tasting coffee. It's a little different, but it's really good. Sustainably Yours Homestead says, what plant do peppercorns come from? They come from the peppercorn plant. Peppercornis peppercornia. No, it comes from Piper nigrum. It's black pepper. It's a climbing vine. It's in the Piperaceae. I think it's Piperaceae. There's a whole family. Kava Kava's in the same family. Root beer plant, Piper auratum, is in the same family. There's some cool stuff growing in that family. But that's black pepper. Mango Dude says, I would love to hear you take a scam call and attempt to keep him on the line as long as possible. Yeah, that would be fun. Food Bear says, so what metric is used to judge plots? Are you going to nutrient test produce? That is a great question. I've not decided yet. I was going to taste test the produce, and I was going to observe the growth levels of the produce from week to week. How is it growing? How does it look? How's the color? How's the flavor? What are the yields per bed? But nutrient testing would be good. It just is going to get kind of expensive. So I may see if I can get a Brix meter. Maybe I can borrow John Kohler's Brix meter. Girly Gamer says, what type of charcoal did you use? If you burn wood in a pit, the heat activates, it strips all the molecules. Always the molecules that absorb. I don't know what. If you burn wood in a pit, the heat activates, it strips always the molecules that absorb. If you burn the wood in a pit, the heat activates, it strips always the molecules that absorb. Girly Gamer, you'll have to clarify, because I don't understand that sentence. Here's the reason why. It's because it says, if you burn wood in a pit, the heat activates, it strips always the molecules that absorbed. Why did I add Dynagro? Because it's basically, it's a sponge, and if you don't put it in there, it will suck anything that's left in the ground. And Monsanto's those evil, bad word? Oh my gosh, man, Jeeper, New Hampshire, oh my gosh. It's almost as bad as the Z word. It's like hydroponics and soil, exactly, Zachary. Pastor Don says, building soil is sometimes more fun than growing the plants. In my opinion, yes, and I agree with your opinion. It definitely looks like moon rocks, doesn't it? That soil, it's terrible, terrible dust. Foodbear says, love Skill Cult, just found him. Yeah, he's cool. He's a very, very sharp guy. I just linked to his apple breeding project in my newsletter. If you're not on my newsletter, you can sign up below most of my videos where it says, get my free composting booklet. That's a bribe to sign up for my newsletter where I send you other free stuff. So I guess it's not a very good bribe. Where there are forest fires, there's great growth. Yes, especially if the plants are optimized for it. Eric says, I have hard South Carolina red clay and rocks, much of it on a steep slope. Having a hard time building the soil on top of the clay without it washing away. Any tips other than terracing? Yes, plant trees. 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 Lots of trees. And lots of strips of natural plants that will catch organic matter. Look up natural vegetative strips. That's what it's called. Strips of trees everywhere. Some of that is made, that ground is just made for trees. Willow's a good one, good suggestion. Yes, hardwood is good. Can you plant peppercorns? Possibly, or possibly they may be too dried out and dead, I'm not sure. It would be worth trying. Pastor Dunn says, biochar with Chinese tallow? Yes, absolutely. Adam says, I'm looking at properties in North Florida to plant my bananas and citrus seedlings. Can I plant them in an understory, water them for a few days, and leave them to their own? No, not really. The first year or so is pretty important, and Florida tends to have really dry springs. They may dry up or do very poorly. They'll probably live, but you'll set them back by a year or two. It's much better to soak that ground and mulch them well and keep them watered as they need it through the dry periods. It will make a big difference on growth. When they get a little bigger, they'll be fine. But bananas will never really thrive unless they have extra irrigation in Florida, or if they're next to a canal or something. Scarlet Farm says, David, I've got 2 Arabicas if you want them. Yes, definitely. Carolyn, thank you. Let's see. Gardener Earth Guy says, Sally was good to me. Just seeded a winter garden out near Navarre. We might be neighbors. Let me see. Where is Navarre? I'm still learning the area. Navarre. I'm looking on Google Maps for Navarre. Ah, that's in Spain. Nope, we're not neighbors. Sorry. Dan says, I have loads of Chinese tallow, letting it grow for chop and drop since it grows fast and appears to rot fast. Yeah, I would do that too. I would let it grow for chop and drop and cut it before it makes seeds, so then it spread around. The Green Shade of Pale says, any thoughts on using lemongrass in my lasagna garden? Port Orange? Yeah, absolutely. I would use it. Joshua says, I have a Pakistan mulberry that I haven't planted yet, and it's winted. I'm not sure what that means. Should I bring it in? I don't know. It depends on your climate, if it's going to go through the winter all right or not. Bobcat Johnson says, my zucchini keeps shriveling and falling off just as I think the flower is going to open. Is this blossom end rot or something distant? Different pH tests at 7. Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't really deal with that particular thing. I don't like that vegetable. It may be a micronutrient thing, or it may be a... it's falling off before the flower opens. That's kind of strange. That may be a micronutrient issue. You might take a micronutrient solution and water it and see what happens. Okay, Sean, that's a little over the top there, bud. Simmons Buddy says, what about peeing into a bucket full of charcoal to charge? Yes, that will do it. Urine will work for charging charcoal and compost. No, Navarre's in Spain. I looked it up. Navarre is in... Oh, okay. I'm looking at... It's right here in Spain. Wow. Navarre, Florida. Let me see. I'm looking right now. Looks like a pretty place. We are like... I'm right in the Atmore area, so we're like an hour and a half away, something like that. It's not that far. I was down in Pensacola the other night. It wasn't that far. It only took like an hour, a little over an hour or something. You don't pronounce the E at the end? Vicky? It's Navarre? Okay, alright, thank you. I appreciate that. So, I want to tell you guys, you can't always build the soil that you want to build fast enough to grow the plants that you want to grow. Scott, thank you very much for the super chat. Much appreciated. We got a second super chat of the evening. Good work. Thank you. Appreciate the tips. The important part, I mean, the primary thing I would say, particularly for those of us that don't have that much money, is to grow food for your family. And second of all, you can grow produce even if it's extractive farming, even if it's not soil building. you could grow produce that is better for you and your family than the produce that you get from the store. Growing even, okay, now don't get on my case for this, but even if you were to till an area and grow veggies in your backyard with 10-10-10, and you did not spray pesticides all over the garden, that would be a step up from conventionally grown produce. That's not the best way to do it, but that is a step up from conventionally grown produce because you're not getting the pesticides on it. You know, the pesticides are really what bother me. And one of the things, you know, every time we eat apples or something, I'm like, I wonder how many things are sprayed on these apples. We used to have so many fruits that I knew weren't sprayed. And then, you know, you go to the store and you read these dirty dozen type, these are the most pesticide filled plants that you buy from the store. And I'm like, you know, look it, I don't care. Just plant a plot in your backyard and don't spray it, and you're like head and shoulders above. Plus, you're growing your own food. You know, with 10-10-10 is super cheap, but urine is free. I've seen a really great garden. I've actually seen 2 gardens that were fed almost primarily with urine, and they did really well. Sean says, "You dirty tiller." That's what the girl called me. I'm glad you picked that up. I didn't know how many people would pick that up. I thought I'm stealing the mulch in the video with the soil amendments. You dirty tiller! It's funny. But you know, if you were to now up your game, right? You start a worm bin. Worm bins, you get that worm tea, right? Which is just like awesome sauce for the garden. That stuff, oh my goodness, it grows some beautiful produce. If you were to make your own fish emulsion, which is free, put some rotten fish in a barrel and you feed it in the backyard, you may not be building the soil, but the produce that you grow with it is going to be rich. It's going to be better and better. The more micronutrients you get in it. Now, if you buy kelp meal or you get seaweed from the beach and you throw that on there, oh my goodness, it's even better. Better and better. And if you go and you know, you look through what I paid for the various amendments for the different beds, we're just going to grow them side by side and see what happens. But when we go and you look at them, you're going to see how cheap some of these things are. If you have your own worm bin and you get worm castings and you grow your gardens in it, I mean, I don't even think the worm castings are necessarily the best part of it. They're awesome and they build the soil, yes, but harvesting the worm castings and getting enough for the garden is kind of a pain. You have to have kind of a big worm operation, I found, to really get enough castings, particularly when you grow a lot of gardens like I do. It's not enough. But the worm tea that comes out of that stuff is awesome. Really rich stuff. It grows everything like crazy. So say you've got really bad soil. You just look at your soil as that's the stuff that holds the earth together, right? It's just holding the roots. You're almost hydroponic gardening. You're not worried so much about what's in the soil. You're growing your own food and you're not using pesticides. Great. You're head and shoulders above commercial. So you throw that worm tea on there, and you get nice, good, solid produce. It's great. Yeah, the self-censoring moderator. That's funny. D. Darling says, micronutrients feed micro-life, grows healthy soil. Yes, I agree. Jim says, I'm using compost extract and worm juice. Add compost to water and add worm farm juice as well. Can be very dilute, 10% to 1% and watered out. Wow, that's like homeopathic gardening. That's great. Anon H says, would a Miracle Grow bed, soil bed, be another bed to try and experiment? Yeah, I mean, go and buy like 4 bags of Miracle Grow dirt, you know, and throw it in there. Why not? Pastor Don says to build soil. I also love chickens on deep mulch. Yeah, that will build some beautiful stuff. I really think that if you're adding those micronutrients, you're going to get healthier and tastier produce, and that's partly what we're testing this time around. This is a very interesting test, and my Dave's Fetid swamp water, which is part of the test, was my method of gathering the widest range of nutrients possible in the cheapest method, the cheapest way possible. Trying to get a good range of different things going that will feed the ground. If I had some chicken manure, I'd throw some of that in there. I had rabbit manure, throw a little of that in there. I had comfrey leaves. This batch actually has comfrey leaves in it. I got comfrey leaves from a friend as well. So, I would throw the Dythonia Diversifolia in there. I'd throw rotten fish guts in there. I'd throw old bones in there. I just would throw stuff from a wide range in there, and I would almost always add magnesium sulfate. Now, if you have clay soil, you don't want to put Epsom salts in your garden because it binds the clay tighter. You want to be really careful with the magnesium sulfate because it makes the soil tighter, it binds it. If you have clay soil and you want to loosen it, add gypsum. You can buy gypsum and add it. That will make a difference. But the Dave's Fetid swamp water, I would grab weeds from one place and tall grass from another. I would take nitrogen fixing leaves and throw them in there, all kinds of different things. And then I'm thinking, okay, this one's going to be a little higher in phosphorus, this one's going to be a little higher, maybe we'll have a little selenium from this, maybe we'll get a little nickel from this, who knows. Put it all together, as wide a range as possible, let it rot down in the barrel. I know the plants can take what they want. And often, that's the way our bodies work, right? You eat a regular diet, whatever you eat, your body takes what you need from that meal and it excretes the rest of it. So, you eat a big steak, you may not need all that's in that steak, but you really could have been short on a couple of things that are in that steak, and if you hadn't had a good piece of red beef in a while, your body's like, yes, I will use everything I can from this red beef now that I have it. When you eat your crucifers and you get a little extra sulfur compounds, your body's like, here we go, we needed some of that. You don't have to eat a high nutrient diet every single day to be healthy. You could be a vegetarian for a week and a carnivore for a week, and your body will use what it uses. And Nazim Taleb, one of my favorite writers, has said that alternating between different treatments is actually very good for the body. So you fast one day and the next day you eat a lot. Maybe you eat nothing but vegetables for a couple of days, or you go on a juice thing for a couple of days, and then maybe you go carnivore. It makes a difference. And your body will use what it uses when it goes through. So what I figure is, hey, let's just put a wide range of stuff into this mix, put it on the garden, and the plants can take what they want. If I want to build soil long term, I usually don't do that in my annual gardens. Annual gardens, by their very nature, are a transient kind of a thing. Yes, you can build up the soil over time. You can deep mulch. You can drop lots of material. You can till under, whatever. If your geology allows it, it lasts for a certain amount of time. And there is potential with adding some clay to sandy soils, or adding biochar to the soil in clay or sand or whatever, to maybe build that soil long term. But I think for the long-term soil building that I like to do is in perennial and tree systems. The food forest type system is the best way, I think, to build the soil the long term, because it becomes a self-maintaining system. It's not, it grows, the leaves drop, the fungi, they build the soil, everything just starts to live and grow and live and grow and live and grow, and it's harvesting all that sunlight and grabbing all that, making all that carbon, and it just becomes this rich forest system that just doesn't go away. But in your annual gardens, you're always pulling roots out, you're always harvesting out of that thing, and you're always dragging stuff from elsewhere and dumping it back in, and it's just the way it goes. That's the way it goes. Joshua says, I hate you, but I love you, David. Thank you, I think. Feed yourself. Doug from Brisbane, Australia. Get some great permaculturalists in Australia. Says, I use compost, quail poop, and bedding. Pigeon peas, ice cream bean, agati, and arrowroot for chop and drop amongst the wood chips. Use whatever you can. Yes, absolutely. And I would say also, you know, the chop and drop and the quail droppings and the compost and everything, you could build the most beautiful looking stuff with those combinations. The chop and drop with manure and with, you know, compost is unbelievable, the stuff that's happening. You're fixing nitrogen beneath the soil, you're adding carbon to the top, you're putting all of the biology that's in that manure, all of the bacteria and everything, just thriving and growing. It's awesome. But I would also throw in micronutrients when I have them. If you can kelp meal an area, if you can throw seaweed on it, if you can get, you know, rock dusts and that kind of thing, you know, see if you can cycle in stuff to the system that you may not have there already. If you're on a vacation and you're in a place with completely different geology from you, maybe you're in an area with thick red clay and you live in a sandy area, or maybe you live in an area with thick red clay and you go to an area that has like black soil. Take some of what's there and mix it into your compost pile, mix it into your garden beds, because you're going to be adding a different set of nutrients. I'll tell you, next time I get to go to North Carolina, to Appalachia, I am coming back with buckets full of red clay, and I'm going to make a slurry out of it, and I'm going to add it to my compost pile for extra nutrients. Eric, thank you very much for the super chat. Eric sends a $10 super chat. He also says, good info, thanks for the tips. Thank you. And thank you for being a member of this channel. I really appreciate the ongoing member support. I am giving away free downloads of various things to members. If you're not a member yet and you want to support the channel, it's $5 a month. You can sign up as a member. There is a link if you are on a PC. If you're on a phone, I don't think it works. Scott says, I'm getting some seriously hot compost piles with just shredded leaves in Scott's Turf Builder 2702. Yeah, you will, because the Turf Builder, that's super high nitrogen. So the shredded leaves, mostly high carbon. It doesn't take much of that Turf Builder to make it hot. And it will act as a very high nitrogen source. That's your green. ZCMN says, my food forest is literally beside an old sand, gravel, and clay pit. Wow. I want to play a song for you guys, but I have to go see if I can find my violinist. Is that okay with you? All right, the violinist is on the way. I'm trying to go back here. Delilah Jane Thu says, David, have you thought of watering with dissolved clay soil to amend your sand? I never tried it, but I'm considering trial. Yes, I would like to do that. Miles of Totality says, my compost has little insects that eat stems and roots of my seedlings. Any advice to get rid of them? You may just want to compost, you may just want to tilt compost under and let it rot in for a bit with no plants so those things die out. You know, you may want to just garden in bare soil. That's rough. Another thing you could do is probably throw that compost down and bake it. You know, put it out to dry out and bake. Throw it out on a concrete patio or something to heat up in the sun and kill them off before you use it. I mean, you lose a lot of your soil biology that way, but the humus will remain. I have baked compost to use for doing seeds that are prone to fungal issues. Joshua says, speaking of gravel, how do roots behave in gravel? They'll move through it. When I was in Indonesia, the soil was just loaded with gravel and they were still growing fine crops. Fighting Bellator 7 says, haha, I'm in the middle of restringing my sister's violin. Good job. No sax. Oh no, sax and violins. No. That's funny. This song, I think, was really originally requested by Gummer Bear. I haven't seen Gummer Bear in a while. But, let me see here. Can you see my violinist? You can't see my violinist! This room is really a mess. It's still like we just moved in. By the way, you see the artwork behind me? This is from Audrey and Elijah, who sent these beautiful pictures to my P.O. box. And Audrey and Elijah are two kids that like gardening. So I'm very happy to have those pictures back there. So I just want to say a shout out to Audrey and Elijah. Thank you for the art. For this song, I think it's a fiddle. Do you want me to mute this for a second? So you can try to find the first note? 1 second, guys.
No, it's okay.
We're going to mute this.
No, it's okay. Go ahead. I'll just shovel it in.
Just shovel.
Well, okay, listen, where I get there, where they can see me. We just did this song for the first time yesterday, so forgive me. I'll do my best.
She's great. She's great. All right, here we go. I come to the garden alone. Well, the dew is still on the roses, and the voice I hear falling on my ear, the Son of God discloses, and he walks with me, and he talks with me, and he tells me I am his own, and the joy we share as we tarry there, none others ever know. He speaks, and the sound of his voice is so sweet, the birds hush their singing in the melody that he gave to me. Within my heart is ringing, and he walks with me, and he talks with me, and he tells me I am his own, and the joy we share as we tarry there, none other has ever known. Go ahead, just go.
No.
Come on, you can shred on this one. This is the violin solo here. I'd stay in the garden with him, though the night around me be falling, but he bids me go through the voice of woe. His voice to me is calling, and he walks with me, and he talks with me, and he tells me I am his own, and the joy we share as we tarry there, none others ever known. And he walks with me, and he talks with me, Rachel. So anyhow, we're still working on that way. I couldn't get Rachel to do the solo. You want to play anything else?
I can try. What you have in mind?
I was thinking something by Rush.
I know.
Let's play Pears in Her Salsa.
I could probably do that one.
Pears in Her Salsa, guys. I have to find the ridiculously complicated lyrics. See if I can find this puppy here. I'm finding it. Thank you all. I know I do not have the really good mic on tonight, so I'm sure it's a little bit blown out. It doesn't sound as good as it should. But now we do what we can. So Pears in Her Salsa, by the way, I don't know if you guys saw it. Those of you who are subscribed on the unauthorized channel, I just posted the live recording of Pears in Her Salsa, actually the band playing, and also some outtakes from the other video, which is kind of funny. So if you wanted to see that, if you're over there, it's pretty good. It doesn't sound as nice because it's the live version before I fixed it all up in the studio, but
Remember how this goes.
that's the dobro part. I met her at a picnic on the great big old green lawn out behind the Alberta Baptist Church. It wasn't her gray eyes or the pigtails in her hair that trapped my poor heart from the first. Wait a second, I'm going to make sure that this isn't blowing out because I have a feeling this is blowing out. Let's try that again. Ready? I met her at a picnic on the great big old green lawn out behind the Alberta Baptist Church. It wasn't her gray eyes or the pigtails in her hair that trapped my poor heart from the first. It was the pears in her salsa. Why didn't she use tomatoes instead? It was the pears in her salsa that just made me go and lose my head. They say her mama told her that the way to catch a man was to shake down some good sand pears and learn just how to can. Garlic, onions, peppers, sugar, and some spice. Give that salsa to your beau, and you're bound to be his wife. It was the pears in her salsa. Why didn't she use tomatoes instead? It was the pears in her salsa that just made me go and lose my head. She dragged me down the aisle, I couldn't help myself, and every single year she keeps restocking our pantry shelf You're the sweetest pair of lovers, everyone would say. But in truth, I only love the pairs that she made her special way. It was the pears in her salsa. Why didn't she use tomatoes instead? It was the pears in her salsa that just made me go and lose my head. 40 years later, all the kids were grown and gone, got nothing in common. So why'd I stay so long? Well, she sees the look I give her, and she leaves her rocking chair. And I know she's headed around the house to pick more pears. It was the pears in her salsa. Why didn't she use tomatoes instead? It was the pears in her salsa that just made me go and lose my head. Thank you.
Yeah.
We got a little more practice on that one.
Uh-huh.
Still got a chord. Opera, did you want to play any more? You guys want us to play any more, or is this enough stream for you? Oh, what do we got here? Where's the sand to soil song? Sand to soil song is funny. It was a pear. That's pretty good. Hugh says I started teaching my kids to cook about the time they started walking. That's awesome. Encore. All right. Lime Buggy. Oh my goodness. You never played Lime Buggy, did you?
No. I don't know that that song lends itself well to
The violin.
the violin or the fiddle. I don't know.
Let's
Well, at
see
least
if
not
I can
me.
remember the. A minor. Rachel has never played this one before, so this is tough, man. It's A minor, C, G,
Just go for it. I'll jump in.
D. All right. There's a truck in my field. In my field, there is a truck. On the back is a thing. A thing is on the back. What's that thing on the back of the truck? It's in my field. It's a lime buggy, buggy lime. What's the thing on the back of the truck in my field? It's a lime buggy, buggy lime.
That might be the silliest song you've ever written.
You think so?
I don't know. I mean,
Is that the silliest song I've ever written? I mean,
do you, can you think of a song?
what? Yes, yes.
You can. All right.
It's in C. This song is sillier than Lime Buggy, I think.
I don't know which song this is.
You know I always think of you differently from everyone else I know. Doesn't mean that it's really good. I should say it different. Different. I think of you in the rain and the snow. I think of you. I think of you every time you go. And you know what I mean. And you know what I mean. There ain't nobody. Disco strings. But like you. Is that sillier than Lime Buggy?
Yeah, I guess it is. I like Lime Buggy better.
But that one's catchy.
Lime Buggy?
No, the one I just did. Also the. That's also C.
And the public song.
Yeah, public song is probably pretty ridiculous. Thank you very much for the super chats and welcome new member. We have a new member. Anthony, welcome. Glad to have you here. Anthony's a new member. And Charlie Bryant sends a $2 super chat. Thank you very much, Charlie. Much appreciated. And Jim T, thank you very much for the $20 super chat. We will play. There's a point where I need to. It's like putting the guitar case out. I'm just gonna play with my guitar case out. All right. So yeah, this one, you know this one. We talking about silly songs? be your friend, baby. I wanna be your friend, baby. I wanna be your best friend. Be your best friend. Hit that last one. Hit that last seat. Let me hear. There we go. So that song is that maybe is that sillier than the previous one?
I don't know if I like this
This funky,
silly.
you know, like the silly stuff. Yeah, I'm sorry. Start with a hymn, and you see what happens. It's the rock and roll. It's the backbeat. It starts just. Yeah. Matt Jeeper says, I love the original D to the G intro. Yeah, and I didn't write that song. That is Kevin Chandler of We Carry Kevin. We Carry Kevin.
Whom you should look up.
You should look up Kevin Chandler. We Carry Kevin. Dude is unbelievable. But he and a friend wrote that particular one. We have anything else that we can do here? I don't think I have another one that I'm going to be able to just wing like that, you know. I would have to just make something else.
That's okay. I'm done.
You're gonna leave?
If you want me to.
No, let's sing. Well, do one more. One more. Do the hamster song.
I've never played it.
It's an E. This song is called Poke 'em in the Eyes. Also called the hamster song. Oh, Bear and Rabbit Meet the Cherry Tree. That's a good one too. Little Susie don't like hamsters 'cause they sneak into a room at night. Got a pen under her pillow so she can poke 'em in the eye, poke 'em in the eye. Won't let them catch her sleeping. She'll be alert when the hamsters are creeping. Poke 'em in the eye, 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 poke 'em in the eye. Little Brownie loves hamsters named John. Gives the smallest hugs and kisses. Sending out the hamster haters and the frizzes. Sink or swim with the fishes. Well, snakes all smile and the lizards laugh. Brian the hamster's Johnny's little golden calf. So we'll sing a song of pick a fence, sing a song of pie. All my little homeboys poke 'em in the eye. Spin around the wheel, press your face up to the glass. Smile with your eyeballs, there's a pretty hamster's pass. I don't see a carving knife, but they got sharp tails. Poking eyes is the way of life, at least we are not snails. Well, Dick was slick, 'cause on a key lick, making some shtick over who's lick his big. But he got nicked by this quick dick, who always tricks dicks adequate bit. I pick up sticks, well they try to throw pies at the multicolored flies, wearing their itty bitty suits and ties. But the flies are quick, and they know the trick. Poke 'em in the eye, 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 poke 'em in the eye. Oh, that is so cool. Hamsters I know are too cool for school. You know I take them swimming in my hamster swimming pool. So grab your sneakers, teach your hamster how to fly. And if he gets rowdy, just poke him in the eye. Poke him in the eye, 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 poke him in the eye. Poke him in the eye, 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 counterpoint on the violin, pizzicato for the win. Oh my goodness. That was awesome. All right, I think we're good for tonight, folks. It's a really good excuse to get Rachel to play violin. I love the violin. Rachel was a viola player when she was younger, and was it 2 years ago I bought you a violin?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, so I had wanted to get her a viola, and I thought about it off and on, and she's like, oh, I don't really have time to play, and I liked playing, but I don't know if I could play again, and all this kind of stuff. And I eventually thought, she would love to play. I think she'd pick it up again. And so I wrote to some of my friends online, and I said, does anybody know where I can get a viola? Anybody have a lead? I was overseas at this point, and it was just like nothing there, no viola players that I knew of. And a friend of mine said, well, I bought a violin. That's a good violin, but I don't need it. I've had it for years. I'm never going to do anything with it. Do you want a violin? And I said, well, I don't know. So Rachel's birthday was coming up, and I wanted to get her a viola for her birthday. And I said, hey, Rach, if you played viola and somebody gave you a cello, could you play that? And she's like, yeah, I would have to kind of respace her. I said, but if you're a violinist, could you play the viola? And she's like, oh yeah, violinists could play the viola. You just got to get your fingers spaced a little different. You get used to it, You should have a chair, sweetie.
That's all right.
I mean, chairs. It's kind of weird. It's like you're like
Sorry,
a kid down there on the
I didn't
floor.
realize
It's really
I
funny
could
looking.
see.
I can see your head back. Hi. Hey. So I said, I was like trying to not say, look at what if I bought you a violin? I was like, is it just theoretically possible for a violinist to play a viola? And she's like, yeah, a viola can play a violin or whatever. It just takes a little practice. Not a big deal. Okay, that's cool. So I told my friend, yes, it's on. And I said, what do you want for it? He says, I'll just give it to you. You're going to give it to me? So my pastor at the time was traveling to the States the next month. So my friend mailed it to where my pastor was staying, and he carried it back through. And my friend sent some strings and rosin and a bow and everything. And so she started playing. And I gave it to her for her birthday. And was that the best birthday present yet?
Yeah, I can't think of a better one, so that was it. Yeah, it was really a great birthday present. We when we were homeschooling, we still are, but we were switching to a new curriculum at the time, and we were learning folk songs, and I thought, oh, what fun it would be to be able to play these folk songs at the time I thought on a viola. It would be so much fun. And so
yeah.
He surprised me with the violin.
And our pastor carrying it through for us and everything. It all worked out. My friend
amazing.
Giving it to us. I was I didn't even buy it. I paid for the shipping.
Yeah, it really was.
And it's a beautiful
Fabulous.
Sounding violin, so it turned out really well.
So really blessed.
Anthony says, I'm a music teacher. Hit me up for all your music needs. Oh, drop me an email, Anthony. My kids are getting into music. Of course, my eldest is a good violin player.
He's a guitar player.
I'm sorry, guitar player. I'm mixing up my instruments. And then he was the one that was shredding on the line buggy. And then my second-born does not play. My third-born is playing the drums. My fourth-born has picked up the bass, and it turns out he has wicked good rhythm, but he's borrowing my bass right now, which makes me slightly nervous. But and then my next child just bought himself a ukulele at Guitar Center with his own money. He's 10?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's 10. And he memorized all 20 chords or something that they gave him with a little book. Within 6 hours, I think he had all 20 chords memorized that came with the book, and he's plunking along and playing and singing.
He's doing a great job.
He's very fast, surprisingly. So I think there's some music that runs in the family. I mean, between Rachel and I, the Lord both gave us some giftings that way. We both hold a tune, So, yeah, Rachel needs a mic. I know she's quieter than I am.
Sorry.
So, anyhow, guys, have a great night. I want to thank all those of you who gave us super chats this evening and welcome new members for super chats. I want to thank Brenton, who was sad I couldn't take my coffee plants with me. I want to thank Scott for the super chat, Scott White, Eric Dolman, Anthony, who is a new member. Welcome, Anthony. Thank you. And Charlie sent a super chat, and Jim T. Thank you very much. Thank you all for the generosity and for having it's a really good excuse to just play some music for you guys. But you know, then there's the soil stuff too. All that really important soil stuff we talked about earlier. So stay tuned. I'm going to be posting some updates. The gardens, the garden test plots, the germination has already started on some of the seeds, which is exciting, and the lasagna garden is slightly ahead. So we'll see what happens. Have a great night. God bless you all. Be sure to check back at thesurvivalgardener.com every weekday morning where I'm putting up new posts now that I have good internet. And I do have a new video up at unauthorized.tv as well if you're a subscriber there and you want to catch that. So God bless. Catch y'all next time. And until then, may your thumbs always be green.